evening, Steeler fans. Welcome to Wednesday night here on the Steel Curtain Network. And if it's Wednesday night, you know it's time for the Curtain Call podcast. I'm your host, Geoffrey Benedict. Here with me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Just was waiting on the show to start, and we was having some fun talking before the show, and we'll be talking about that here in just a minute.
Yeah, not too far in here. We're doing today's show is called "What's Left on the Steelers Shopping List," and we're going to take a little time here with the main signings of free agency. We had a lot of signings, a lot of stuff go on. We're going to look back, say what's left on the Steelers list, and where should they try to fill these holes, as we're getting a clearer picture of what the needs are going forward. What's going to be a draft pick, and who do we think the Steelers should still fill through free agency or with, whatever scraps they can find at the end. Shannon, we're going to start. We're going to start with the offense. And we're going to start with quarterback. This team doesn't really have a number 3 quarterback. They've never gone into a season with just 2. Is one of the least important positions right now if you look at the 2 in front of this guy with Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. Do you think the Steelers should go take a late-round flyer on a quarterback, or do you think this is a position where you can just go undrafted free agent, camp bodies, let them fight it out, or even sign like a cheap veteran?
Well, it kind of depends on how the draft falls, but they do have 2 7th-round picks, and there is a couple guys that I think might fall into that 7th round, kind of like a Brock Purdy last year, Mr. Irrelevant range. We've talked about, Stetson Bennett from Georgia or Max Dugan from TCU. I mean, there's some really guys that I think would be really good clipboard holders, but have a little bit of moxie to them that can come in and, maybe offer you something if you're forced to go with the 3rd string quarterback in the game. If you get to that point, it's a bad situation, but I think those guys could come in and offer something. So I wouldn't mind to see them take a 7th round flyer on a guy, but any earlier than that, no, I'm not interested right now.
Yeah, it would be interesting to me if you took kind of that young quarterback kind of guy and develop into Kenny Pickett's backup. We only got Trubisky for 1 more year, right? And unless you're going to go after next year and sign a veteran to back him up, I think at 3rd season, Kenny Pickett's going to be fine. So I could see them getting a guy like that, kind of developing into that number 2, and possibly, a guy who could eventually trade out from there if he got good enough. That's never a bad situation. Those low-round quarterbacks sometimes pay off like that.
You might have seen it. I might have missed it. I try to keep up with current events, but I'm sure that there's been so many teams, trying to talk to Mason Rudolph, bringing him in, they're interested, but I'm not seeing it. I keep missing all the stuff on Twitter with people saying, he visited here and he's talking about with this team. Have you seen anything?
I have seen nothing from Mason Rudolph. Which is, again, seriously, that's a 3rd round pick. That was a 3rd round pick by the Steelers, and nowhere. Nobody wants to, he's nowhere. And you look at the film when he played, he wasn't that bad. It's just nobody is going to sign that player. Nobody's interesed. It's strange.
It's funny how it seems like other teams are saying what I've been saying all along. Even though that's all we heard last offseason was Mason Rudolph's going to get a shot. He's going to, he's more familiar with Canada's system. And I'm like, nope, do not want Mason Rudolph in there. Everybody knows that understands what an NFL quarterback looks like. So I think the NFL's spoken.
Do you think he has a job next season? Do you think he's on a roster 2023?
Man, just looking at the teams that even need a 3rd string quarterback, there's some guys that I think are more interested in him in the 5th, 6th, 7th round this year. So, he might not unless somebody gets injured.
Wow. That would be something. That would be something from on paper in a competition to start for the Steelers to out of the NFL.
Yep.
That would be crazy. Moving on from quarterback, running back. we're gonna slide fullback into this too. Do you see the Steelers going anywhere? Running back, fullback, or you think draft pick? Do you think the Steelers are gonna go out and specifically get a fullback?
We kind of did a show similar to this prior to free agency.
Yeah,
and it's always good to do multiple ones. Before free agency, after free agency, after the draft. And if you'd have told me they'll look at another running back, I'd be like, nope, not a chance. And I think I said that. Don't need one. Maybe bring Benny Snell back, Anthony McFarland.
Yeah,
But now, look at how they're committing to this run-heavy power football, time of possession. What they did so good in them last 7-8 games last year. And looking at this class of running backs, I don't see anything out of free agency that intrigues me. But, boy, this class of running backs looks good. And that's why I wish the Steelers had a 5th and a 6th round pick, because there's going to be some guys in that middle rounds that is going to come in and can do a Jalen Warren. Now, the Steelers lucked out. I mean, they didn't. Jalen Warren wasn't even the priority undrafted guy. That was the other cat from Duke, I think.
Yeah, we don't even remember his name.
I can't even remember his name. But Warren was a steal. He was a hidden gem. But what's that running back from Pitt today at his pro day? I can't say his last name, so I will not attempt it. But he, ran almost like a 4.4, 41-inch vertical, 11-foot broad, and he had a big season for the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
But he's being projected down in the middle rounds. So, hey, it's all about adding weapons and talent when you can. And with the needs the Steelers have, running back's not a high priority. But if you can put a guy like that in there, they would have to consider it.
Yeah. I looked up his name, Israel. Starts with an A.
Yes,
that's
him.
I'm not even trying that one, but wow.
Yep.
I could see it now. It's starting as other things have gone, especially with the guards.
Yep.
Man, if this team is gonna roll 3 or 4 guards deep with those run blockers into the season, how much would it be the value to have a Willie Parker? Even if it's not Willie, not as good as Willie was, but that kind of just straight line, hit the hole with speed, kind of a guy to be behind Warren and Najee, who are both smart, harder runners, stuff like that. Just have a guy who could boom, burst, who we kind of hoped Anthony McFarland could be, but he wasn't. That kind of a player, man, would be phenomenal on this team. Give them some big play threat. Give them to augment the steady running we get from Warren and Harris.
When you struggle to score in the red zone, it's always good when you can score outside the red zone. So if you have those guys that's got that explosiveness that can give you splash plays, hey, give me more of them.
You know what's amazing to me, though? This is a little off topic here. Well, it's kind of on topic. Is the Steelers were great when they got in real close. If they were within like 2-3 yards, they're good. If they're like 4 to like 25, they're in bad shape. If they're that far away from the goal line, it's like, we don't know how to play football anymore. But if we could somehow if you could like get a penalty, get something, George Pickens makes a huge catch, something, it will be great. Then we're good. We got it. We're good. So yeah, I'm with you there. Fullback. You can give me the answer on the fullback.
Yeah, well, again, I want Connor Hayward at H-back because I want all the weapons on the field that they can have. And I think he can be used in such a variety of ways in Canada's offense. And I think he could definitely be an improvement as an offensive threat at fullback. Maybe not be quite the blocker that Watt is, but still, not that they use him that much anyway. His special teams value is more important to me than his offensive value. But there is a guy, and it might have been you that mentioned him, from North Dakota State or South Dakota State.
It wasn't me.
There's a fullback that's coming out of college that is projected, I think, around the 5th round. And he's another one of them guys. I think it's where's Trey Lance from? He's from that same college.
Yeah.
But it's one of them Dakota States. But anyway,
up there.
he's a real versatile guy that has a really varied skill set. And on this team, if they don't pick up that third running back we were just talking about, getting a guy like that would be a real upgrade over, let's say, what Derek Watt offered him.
Would you have Connor Hayward be your fullback and give him some runs?
Oh, he can run the ball.
He can.
You've seen it on tape at Michigan State.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had that one sweep late in the game, if I remember right, or reverse against the Raiders.
Yeah, he had he had a jet sweep that ran well.
Yeah,
and he had a H-back counter play where he ran inside.
He can run the ball.
There.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're going with a throw. I could see the Steelers not getting a fullback, but I don't think you can use Connor Hayward as a fullback. Like you can in a we're gonna line him up at fullback and it's not, but he's not a real fullback. Right?
No,
he
he's
can
not
play
a
that.
fullback. No.
He can line up there, but he's not a real fullback.
But he's not a tight end either.
For me, if they want to do this power heavy, if they're really dedicated to running between the tackles, you need a fullback. You need somebody who can do the job. And that's you find someone who can be a special teamer and be that fullback and run up there and block some people. I think you'd have value in this offense. There are so few of those players left.
But I'm disappointed.
They're not there.
I'm disappointed in you, GB.
Yeah.
I thought I really taught you something last week. But we got a guy named Nasty Nate Herbig.
I know.
And if you want to go power football and you want a big fullback, I got one for you. That's all I'll say. That's all.
Okay. I know I'm not opposed to that. So I'm okay with that. The thing is, if you're gonna have a fullback, you need a real fullback. Yeah. I don't want an H-back pretending to be a fullback anymore. I don't like that. All right, we gotta move on. Tight ends. We got 3. Because we brought back Zach Gentry. Are you making any moves at that position, or are you set?
Well, one of the reasons why I want to move Hayward, because again, Hayward you can put him on the depth chart at running back, you can put him on the depth chart at tight end. So you can conceivably still pick up a tight end. This is a great class of tight ends.
Yeah.
Even if they don't get a Darrell Washington or a Kincaid or a Meyer, all these guys that I've talked about, I'd like to see early in that with that 32nd pick. There's guys that's going to be 4th round, just going to get pushed down that would normally be a 1st or 2nd round pick, but it's just such a deep class. But that kid Kuntz is a monster. He's big as Gentry, but he's big as that. It took a while for Gentry to build his body, but Kuntz is a much better athlete than Gentry, a much better receiving threat, and he is a really good blocker. So there's a guy, that's why I'm all for trading back and picking up an extra couple of picks in the 3rd and 4th round, because there's going to be so much talent there.
Yeah, that's a tempting thing. That really is. You want a lot of mid-round picks in this draft. 3 in the top 50 is not bad. That's not bad. But
I want more.
A whole bunch of 3rd and 4th rounders would be pretty good too.
I'm greedy. I want more. I see today that they were talking about Levis. Is that his name? The quarterback out of Kentucky, maybe falling to 32. Oh, please let that happen. Because if that happens, there's going to be teams that's going to want to trade up.
Yep.
To get him at the top of that 2nd round.
And you'll be able to take calls all day.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. All I'm saying, they could really maybe get a good haul out of that 32nd pick. So I hope one of them quarterbacks does fall.
All right. Wide receiver. Steelers still don't have a wide receiver 3. We got more tight ends than we do wide receivers. What are you doing with a wide receiver?
I actually have an article getting ready to come out. Well, it's been submitted, but it'll be next. I got one tomorrow, but it's about how the Steelers can, strengthen this wide receiver group. Because, again, that was another one when we talked before free agency. I said Steelers are fine. They're fine. But the more I've looked at it, Deontay Johnson is not reliable. He's not a true number one. Pickens has not proven that he can be a number one, talent-wise, but he has to show the work ethic and the dedication to prove his footwork and his route running. Then when you get to number 3, it gets shaky. I mean, you know, we think Anthony Miller can still play, but can he stay healthy? Calvin Austin's never even stepped foot in a preseason game. And you got Gunnar Osowski. So, you know, there's some guys that I mentioned because everybody's talking about the first and second round guys.
Yeah.
So in this article, I talk about, I won't give everything, but I talk about Miles Boykin and what a great value he is and how he needs to be retained, brought back. I mentioned 3 guys in the middle rounds that the Steelers could really look at and improve their receiver room. And the last thing I mentioned was, you talked about it a couple weeks ago, bringing in Hines Ward to be an assistant offensive coach. Now think about this, GB. 2 things. He can help with that receiving room because when you got a guy of his stature, he talks, they listen.
Yep.
Secondly, he can help be a passing game coordinator for Matt Canada and assist him on what he needs the most help at. And he would also bring back the part of that Steeler culture and legacy that has left the building since guys like Ben and the Super Bowl winners are no more. Yep. So that's part of that article. But I like I said, last time we talked, I was not interested in receiver until maybe the 4th round. But now, looking at the stable, you know, maybe 3rd or 4th round, and there's some intriguing guys in there.
All right. See, I've taken a different stance here. Recently, if you listen to my podcast earlier this week, the Cutting Room Floor, I brought up a guy that I think could play a lot of snaps in the slot. And I'm going to bring up a couple guys already on the team that I think are going to get some snaps in the slot. One is Jaylen Warren. Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren were on the field a good bit together last season. And toward the end, they were increasing the number of 2 running back sets they had. I expect that to continue. And Najee Harris can run some routes. Jaylen Warren's not bad either. They had some success putting those guys in the slot. And Jaylen Warren did a fantastic job on a jet sweep from lined up in the slot with Najee Harris in the backfield. You can do some stuff like that with this team, especially if you're going more run-oriented. That can create some issues because obviously matchup issues are created by who are you putting on the field if you see the Steelers trotting out a set that has 2 running backs, right? What personnel package are you putting out there with that? Another one, Pat Freiermuth. Zach Gentry's back. He's your inline tight end. If you come out in 2 tight end sets, you can put Zach Gentry in the slot. You put Zach Gentry and George Pickens on the same side of the field. That's rough to deal with. That is really rough to deal with. And if you're trying to deal with that, you got Deontay Johnson over there on the other side of the field with no help, slipping off for short routes.
But you can put Connor Hayward in there too. There's like 4 guys, but the problem is there's only 2 receivers, and neither one of them is a sure thing.
Nope. I agree with you.
So to me, there's nothing in free agency that I find intriguing. I looked over the list and I'm like, but there is a few guys there at the draft, and they need to think about the future at the very least. So I would, again, but we keep talking about draft picks, and they only got so many. So that's why I'd like to get a couple more. But I do like some options that are available out there.
Yeah, I see. I think wide receivers dropping down. The last one is Connor Hayward. We saw at the end of the season, he is a really good receiver in the slot. He is a dangerous little weapon there. I would love to see the Steelers get him more involved out there. You think you're running a screen pass out there. You got Connor Hayward in the slot blocking for you. George Pickens out wide. Come on, run a screen behind that. That's going to be some fun to watch right there. And I like it. I think there's a lot of potential there. I imagine things like you go 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, and a wide receiver. You got George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, Connor Hayward, Jalen Warren, and Najee Harris. You go 5 wide with that group.
Mm-hmm.
You can put them all out there and be like, yeah, you think we're in a power set, we're 5 wide. Who are you putting on Connor Hayward?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you putting on, Najee Harris? Like, that would be a lot of fun I think that could have a lot of potential. The last group on offense, we got to get to them here, the offensive line. And we're going to break this into 2 sections here. Is center a real pick option for the Steelers in the draft?
I read something really interesting today. I can't remember the young man's name. It's last name Smith. And I can't remember. He's from Minnesota, maybe.
Oh, you don't believe? Let me look that up. Go ahead.
I think he's from Minnesota, but he is a very versatile player. They said they think he's the most pro-ready interior offensive lineman, and I mean he looks really, really good when you watch him on film. I'm starting to think, and I read the article today. The guy was talking about that Cole signed through this season because he signed a 2-year deal last year. And not that they're necessarily trying to replace Cole, but you could actually draft somebody for him to mentor because they're looking at Smith and Avila from, I think it's TCU, the 2 top centers. They've already had visits with both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they're interested, even though they got all these guards. I'm not saying they're trying to upgrade from Cole, but they might be trying to bring a guy in, kind of like Mike Webster. His first year he didn't start at center, and they eased him into that because there's so much communication and leadership and stuff that has to, you have to learn and to be part of that group. Yeah, John Michael Smith. There is some guys these 2 guys that they're talking to. At first, it didn't make sense, but it really does because that way, if Cole leaves after next year, you have your replacement ready. He's learned under a really solid fundamental player in Cole, and it makes some sense. So, everybody, we've all been looking at tackles, but the Steelers are still looking at interior linemen. So,
well, interior offensive linemen are much lower paychecks, much lower investments in money and in draft capital than offensive tackles. That's why I say, like, if you're at 17 and someone falls like a Paris Johnson somehow falls to 17, like, you run up and grab him.
Yeah,
you run up to the podium and you take him. Otherwise, man, deprioritize offensive tackle. Make do at offensive tackle. And I think what we saw in a lot of years there where Ben was safe was he had Ramon Foster, he had David DeCastro, he had Marquise Pouncey in between there.
Yeah.
And if he got pressure off the edges, he just stepped up into the pocket because those 3 had it locked down. And if you can step up into the pocket and you have room to move in that pocket because your interior offensive line is creating that kind of space for you, those edge rushers have a nightmare getting around that edge and back up. That's almost impossible to do. Even TJ Watt struggles when they have players that can step up.
Yeah.
Like that, if your quarterback can step up in the pocket, the edge rush doesn't matter as much.
Interior pressure is debilitating.
Yep.
It'll destroy any offense. Interior pressure. Now, outside, like you said, you can escape or you can step up. It's easier to offer help to tackles, because the Steelers tackles got a lot of help last year.
Yep.
At times. But if that interior is soft, you're done.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, now to tackle. We kind of started covering it here. Okay. I'm trying to think of how to word this, but I'm gonna go this way. What are the odds? Give me a percentage odds that your starting tackles for the Steelers next year are Dan Moore Jr. and Chukwuma Okorafor.
To start the season?
To start the season.
I'll say 90-some%.
Wow.
Because Tomlin doesn't like to start rookies.
No, he doesn't.
He eases them in. He might be 4 games in, but he wants to ease them in. And I'm hoping the Steelers can get one of them top tackles. But again, my realistic view is that maybe at 32, or if they trade back a little bit, they can still get DeJuan Jones. Because if you look at the guys they're looking at, they're big boys. That Smith's kid is 330. Avila's 335. Jones is whatever he is, 370, 360. They like these. They're, Waddle's always like big offensive linemen. And so I think he really fits what they're wanting to do. But even if they get him, I'd love to see a Okorafor and Moore battle it out at left tackle and then put Jones in if they could get him and let him work through the preseason and see how it goes. But I just think Tomlin will make him wait. I don't care who they get.
Yeah. I agree with you there. And I've been saying this for years. I'm not high on the Steelers taking offensive tackles at any point. I mean, you think of the tackles we've had.
Yeah.
Chukwuma Okorafor was a 3rd-round pick. And he's stuck around. He's one of the longest tenured Steelers on the offense. You've got Alejandro Villanueva off the waiver wire, like a futures contract, right?
Yeah.
That's where we got him. You had Kelvin Beachum, 7th-round pick. How many Steelers tackles were nobody? No investment whatsoever in getting them, and then they worked out. And okay, cool, that's fine. But they don't really focus on getting big names and talents at tackle. They got, 2nd-rounders. They had like Marcus Gilbert and Mike Adams. Both of them were to play right tackle.
Yeah. Right?
They're bigger. They go bigger right tackle even than left tackle. So the odds that Dan Moore is over there at left tackle to me is pretty high. I understand why people say Chukwuma Okorafor at left tackle. All the numbers, everything, his physical profile, his film, everything says he should be a left tackle, other than when they put him there. And he very quickly showed. They very quickly put him back to right tackle. Because left tackle, he was terrible.
But last year was the first time I've ever seen him show any nasty.
I know.
I mean, he blocked up to the whistle, and then he would get in some shoving after the whistle. One time he jumped back and landed on a guy. Remember, the TV announcers were like, "That should be a penalty." No, I mean, he blocked the guy. The guy fell down. And he just dived on him. That was effort. That's extra effort that Okorafor never gave in the past.
Yep.
But I think Pat Meyer, his coaching, and having Daniels there next to him, I think it kind of brought out a little bit of what we've been wanting to see, that intensity. So I think that he deserves another shot at left tackle, at least at camp, and maybe early preseason, especially if they do get a guy like Juwan Jones in the draft.
All right. Well, we need to take our break. That's going to finish our talk for the offense. When we get back, we're getting into the fun, talking about the defense. We'll be back right after this break. And we're back. We just finished up talking about the offense. We're getting to the defense. Shannon, I'm going to jump right into it. Defensive line. They brought back Ogunjobi. We said they should. We've got DeMarvin Leal. We've got some young guys in Isaiah Loudermilk. Do the Steelers have any real need for a defensive lineman?
Definitely. See, I think you got Cam Hayward, who's still, near the top of his game, but you just never know when, it's starting to decline.
Yeah,
I thought it had happened earlier in the year, but that's because he didn't have TJ around, and the whole defense was struggling. But when TJ came back, Hayward exploded late in the season. Because the effort's always there. But once he starts to lose a little bit of what that extra little bit of quickness that helps him get back, penetrate and get those sacks, I think he'll slide inside more full time like Alulu did. See, Tyson Alulu was a bust in Jacksonville for all intents and purposes. Coming to Pittsburgh, had a career revival late because he switched to more defensive tackle, nose tackle. He still played some in for the Steelers, but not much. And I see Hayward's career going that trajectory. So you got Ogunjobi, who has been injury prone. I'm really glad they brought him back. Behind them, you got Adams, Travis Adams, who was a journeyman at best. You got Loudermilk, and hasn't even proven he's a journeyman.
Yep.
And then you don't have anything. So to me, right now, one of the biggest holes that I'm concerned about is they need beef inside. Now, I talked about Tomlinson from Minnesota Vikings, but he got signed by the Browns for crazy money. And Steelers were not going to even offer him anything close to that. But there is still a few guys out there in free agency that they can bring in with experience, to help. But I think they're going to have to use a first, second, or third round pick on a large, big-bodied tackle. Because if they can add two more guys to that equation and leave Adams and Loudermilk as developmental projects, I think they'll be okay.
I see. I've been watching a lot of draft talk, and we're going more and more cornerback, wide receiver, offensive line, all these linebacker, safety now. All these positions are getting a lot of hype for early round draft picks. And I look at that defensive line and I say, man, that's to me, it's 2 years overdue. I was saying 2 years ago they needed to go early in the draft to get themselves a defensive lineman. And I think they still need to do it. They haven't done it yet. I'd love to see it. That's Andy Weidel does good on offensive and defensive line. Let's go out and get a defensive lineman. We need someone to play the nose. Like you said, Cam Hayward, he's not there yet. So I don't think this year he's an answer there. I don't think you were trying to say that either. But,
no.
Yeah. So we need someone to play the nose. And
that's, you like Michigan. And Maisie Smith.
Yeah, I like Maisie Smith.
Is really an incredible athlete for his size.
I like
so
that
he's going to be able to give you, not only is he stout and can stack and, an anchor, but he can give you penetration. And even if you're just bull rushing a guy. And he could easily slide over and, be the next Cam Hayward.
Yep.
When you look at their athletic profiles, they're similar.
Yeah.
I mean, he's that good an athlete. So he's not just a defensive tackle. He's more like a defensive lineman the way the Steelers use Hayward. So to me, I do not like Brian Breeze or Breezy. I don't know how you say it, if it's Breeze or Breezy, but it ain't that I don't like the kid. He's just had a lot going on. He's had a lot of injuries and illnesses and everything and a lot of family drama and, which is terrible. It was tragic, but it's just like Tuitt. I mean, I understand Tuitt just didn't want to play no more. His heart wasn't in it. Yeah. And, you have to do what's best for you and your family. But if I already know that going in, and I'm going to use the first round draft pick, I would look at Maisie Smith and then later on, maybe that Dexter kid or sometimes I forget their names, after looking and watching them. But there's some guys there in the late second, third round that would be a really good upgrade for the Steelers.
All right, I'm going to move straight to. I agree with you, Maisie Smith. Maisie Smith would be amazing. I'm going to combine both outside and inside linebacker because it looks like we have our starters. Right, we signed two inside linebackers, Holcomb and Roberts. We've got Watt and Highsmith. Behind them, we don't have much, and more than that, even we don't have any special teams players. We've lost all of our special teams players, right? So for me, number 3 linebacker, outside linebacker, number 3 inside linebacker, special teams. Where do these fall on priorities for you?
Well, it wouldn't be a big priority as far as the edge if Bud Dupree will, can pass the physical and can work out something with the Steelers. We're not hearing anything. First, I heard he was in for a visit, and then I heard he hadn't visited yet. So I don't know what to believe. But as we've talked before, if he can come back, at this point, I think he understands that it's a great opportunity to rebuild his career, be that third guy, be fresh, come in, going up against, tired tackles and, really show what he can do. If that knee's completely healed and, some other hamstring issues he's had. So I'm not as concerned about that. If they don't get, don't look like they're going to get this deal worked out. I wish they'd do it before the draft. Because if they don't get it worked out before the draft, they need to look at a few guys available in the draft. But right now, I haven't really been paying much attention to that because I keep expecting Bud to be back.
Yep.
But now, as far as inside linebacker, I'm very happy with our main 3. But there's something that just happened with our safety, Terrell Edmonds. And I don't know if we want to talk about it now or talk about it later, but what happened
we're saving that for a bit.
Well, what happened with Edmonds leaving? My article that's posted in tomorrow is about how that Edmonds leaving is going to impact what the Steelers do at inside linebacker in the draft. They definitely want another inside linebacker. Now, there's a guy in the draft that I think is the best off-ball linebacker in this class by a wide margin, and to me, that's Jack Campbell. I am pounding the table. You know how it was about Creed Humphrey.
Yep.
Every year there's a guy or two that's how I feel about Jack Campbell. I believe that is a football player, plain and simple. His 4.65 was solid enough, but his explosive measurables were off the chart, top of the class. He, the vertical, the broad, all them explosive metrics, he has it. And if you watch him, it's a joy to watch him on film. He's just so physical. And the way he goes to the ball reminds you of watching the greats from the past. He just has a nose for the football. He doesn't take a false step. As I said, he reminds me of another Jack Splatt, Jack Lambert. And especially wearing that black and yellow there in Iowa, he reminds me so much of Lambert. But I'm afraid that he's a pure buck. He's a buck linebacker. Well, Roberts is a buck linebacker. He's undersized, in height, but he is a buck linebacker. Holcomb has the movement skills. He can play Mac. And Robertson, I think, we don't know yet what his ceiling can be. Because he can run around a 4.6. So I think he can be fast enough to play either position with his instincts and aggressiveness. So therefore, I think, because of the guy we lost in the secondary, that the Steelers are going to miss out on Jack Campbell if he's there to take a guy like Trenton Simpson from Clemson or a couple of other guys I mentioned in the article that are more Edmonds' shape and size and speed and try to replace what they lost with a linebacker. I do not like that idea, but I'm afraid that's what's going to happen.
All right. To me, one last follow-up question here. If Bud Dupree doesn't resign, if he doesn't come back, and you go into the draft with the two linebacker rooms exactly how they are, would you expect a higher pick to be spent on the outside or inside linebacker?
Steelers love their edge guys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you always know, if there's a needed edge, it's a high pick. Or if there's a guy that falls, they're going to get him. I mean, edge is it. Because in that 3-4, you got to have him. And you see what happened when Watt was out and they could double team Highsmith. Steelers, they get 1 sack a game. I mean, that kills the Steelers 3-4 defense. If they can't get Bud Dupree to return, seeing these free agency guys that they, brought in Holcomb and Roberts, it would not shock me at all because there's really not a lot out there in free agency at edge either now. It wouldn't shock me if the higher selection was an edge guy.
Okay. Wow. I would go inside linebacker. I think the inside linebacker is where they would take it higher, but I can see where you're going with that. Second to last position we're going to cover here, cornerback.
Yeah.
What do you think's going on with cornerback?
Well, we've talked in the past, and this is something me and you both have said, going all the way back to before free agency. The Steelers need to draft a young, talented cornerback. They need a guy to bring in that could possibly be a number one down the line. Patrick Peterson is at one time was definitely a number one, and now he is a very proven, experienced player who's going to be a great mentor. And I believe they brought him in for multiple reasons. One, we found out just recently that they're talking about playing him some at safety. And he's that smart. Charles Woodson did it. Rod Woodson did it. And Peterson is that caliber of intellectually and physically. So I believe he can come in and do that. That being said, you got to have the young cornerback for him to mentor. So I'm expecting in a really deep class of corners I'm expecting the Steelers to use a first or second round pick on one.
I'm still leaning that way. I think if things don't fall for it, I don't think we're going to see an Artie Burns situation where the Steelers just pick a cornerback anyways. If the right one's there, I think they go for it. Otherwise, I mean, if you're thinking just this year, I think you go into this year with Peterson, Wallace. Witherspoon is kind of a wild card. What will he give you? Arthur Millette, Trey Norwood. Like, they're not worse off than they were last season. In fact, I think Peterson is an upgrade over what Cameron Sutton gave us last year. I know he's older, but just for this season, I think he's an upgrade over what Cam Sutton gave us. At least he would be. If he can play like he did last year, he's an upgrade over Cameron Sutton. Not a big one, but he is. He is. It's just Cameron Sutton is kind of on the ascend. Patrick Peterson is coming down. So that's that situation. But I think for this season, he could be even an upgrade. But I think you're going to see it. This is a great year for cornerbacks, and I think you will see a high pick used on that cornerback. I don't see them signing any more people to come in after Peterson without the rooms they have. There's room for a draft pick there, but there's not really room for anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that puts us at the safety position. Shannon Sharp, do you want to go first on this?
Well, me and you both are disappointed.
Shannon Sharp?
Yeah, you call me Shannon Sharp. That's okay.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I just accused you of playing for the Ravens.
I wasn't going to call you Mayock, but no, we're both disappointed that to see Terrell Edmunds leave. I don't blame Edmunds because it sounds like it would come down to the Steelers wasn't interested in him really, and it's all about respect.
Yeah.
And I almost had it loaded up where I could play RESPECT, a little Aretha there, when I talked about Edmunds. But I wish him nothing but the best. He was a class player, person, teammate for everybody. I respect everything he gave the Steelers while he was wearing the black and gold. That being said, I just could not understand it. I understand the Steelers wanting to get more splash plays, but what he offered as a durable and reliable guy is not as easy to replace. He's the kind of guy that you like, I really don't need him until you don't got him. And then you're like, well, man, we weren't giving up these 40, 50, 60-yard touchdown runs last year. What changed? Well, you didn't have Edmunds' speed to run these guys down. The things that used to give the Steelers fits when they had Sean Davis and Mike Mitchell and them guys, that went away with Edmunds. But people forget. People forget tight ends dominating the Steelers, and they had no answer. And at the time, they had guys like Vince Williams, Joe Bostic, or even before them, they had trouble covering the tight ends. And Edmunds, man, if that tight end had a big first half, second half, Steelers put Edmunds on him, and that was over.
It was over.
There was a lot of value there. A lot more than $2 million a year. So I thought for sure that they would do a 3-year, $9 million or something to make you feel wanted and respected. Steelers decided not to. And now they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do. In the draft, there's a couple of guys that kind of remind you of Edmunds. Everybody keeps talking about Brian Branch out of Alabama. He's more like Minka, a small version of Minka. He's not big. He's very smart. He would probably give you more splash plays, but he's not physical. He can't play that box safety like Edmunds did. Miles Killebrew can, but again, he's a step down, big step down. If you draft that kid out of Alabama, Battle, or the Illinois guy, Sidney Brown, I like Sidney Brown a lot. And he's a very physical. He could, do a lot of what Edmunds did. But there again, we have all these guys we'd like to see a pick used on, and they're going to have to use a third-round pick probably to get him. So I think now you're going to have to use the draft pick because they want too many guys out there in free agency. Rapp was one, Taylor Rapp, but he just got picked up by somebody. So I don't know where they're going to go. I mean, it opened up a hole that they didn't need to have, honestly.
I talked about this a lot on my on the cutting room floor on Tuesday. I wrote an article that was out about it. I think it just came out today or yesterday on the Steelers free safety room. And I'm really confused as to their priorities. When you look at the contract they offered DeMonte Kazee and what Terrell Edmunds took to go to Philadelphia, I wonder if when they say we offered him a contract, if they just offered him another veteran benefits 4th-year contract. It's a whole thing. Last year Edmunds got $2.5 million, but he only counted like 1.3, something like that against the cap. It's the new veteran benefits, and part of it is if a player has played for your team for 4 years, you can give them an even better veteran minimum contract. Yeah. And that's what they gave Edmunds. Then you can do it again the next year, right? And it's like a slight improvement over the one before. But they have to sign, I believe, I could be wrong on this, they have to sign it before their contract ends. It's basically a 4th-year player extension kind of a deal. And I would bet you that's what they offered him. I would bet you that's what the Steelers offered him. I cannot see, if you look at the contract that DeMonte Kazee got, I cannot see Edmunds choosing a contract that is a year less, $1 million a year less, and has $1 million less guaranteed just to leave the Steelers when he wrote he's writing all these glowing things about the Steelers as he's leaving. Mm-hmm. Right? Like he's not showing any anger. He's not showing any animosity. He's openly talked about how much he loves playing with Minkah Fitzpatrick. I can't imagine they gave him a good offer and he turned it down. That I want to start with that. And what doesn't make sense to me is if you look at the other stuff, I'll try not to go into it too far. The week that Edmunds was out and Kazee was there, DeMonte Kazee is like 5'11", 175 pounds. He's not your strong safety.
Nope.
And when it was Minkah Fitzpatrick and DeMonte Kazee at safety, Minkah was the strong safety. And that meant Minkah was in the box. Minkah was in man coverage on tight ends. Darren Waller actually had a good game against Minkah Fitzpatrick in man coverage. Edmunds, honestly, I think Edmunds is a better man cover guy than Minkah Fitzpatrick is. Mm-hmm. But I could be wrong there, right? It could be Minkah, but they're close. They're close. Either way you go, it's close. But let me tell you what, when you've got a choice between Trey Norwood back there backing up Minkah Fitzpatrick or Minkah Fitzpatrick back in zone to back up Terrell Edmunds, I know which one is better. Yep. They had no problems. Minkah Fitzpatrick is up in man, you throw deep. Derek Carr was throwing deep bombs all day, and even when he wasn't completing them, the weather, all that stuff, Steelers stepped up and made plays. Minkah wasn't back there. He was back there and some of the few snaps he was back there, he made an interception and broke up another pass when he was actually back in deep zone.
But don't you think that they weakened 2 positions by making that decision? Because if you got to use Minkah as a strong safety, you're limiting his effectiveness.
Yeah. You're basically taking your $17 million player and saying you're going to be a $3 million player. Because at strong safety, he's roughly as good as Terrell Edmunds. Maybe a bit better, but not much. And if you're starting DeMonte Kazee next to Minkah Fitzpatrick, then Minkah's your strong safety. When you get to nickel, when you get to dime, you can do other things. We can talk about Patrick Peterson playing safety. He is not going to be in the box playing like Terrell Edmunds.
No.
He's not. You're not using him like an extra linebacker. You're not doing that with Patrick Peterson. You're not asking him to take on offensive linemen. You're not doing that. Mm-hmm. So if Patrick Peterson is playing safety, sure, that works in dime packages where he can be deep and Minkah can be the robber, stuff like that. But who's your strong safety when there's 2 safeties on the field? Mm-hmm. When there's 2 of them on the field, who's going into the box? And if it's DeMonte Kazee across from Minkah Fitzpatrick, it's Minkah Fitzpatrick going in the box. And that's why he left Miami.
Yeah. One thing I don't understand is we're hearing more and more about how the Steelers, everybody in the NFL wants the hybrids. They want a guy who, an inside linebacker, he's not a bucket or a Mac, he's both. But he's also neither because he can do it all. Well, Warren for the Niners, maybe Wagner at one time, Levante David. There's a few guys that you could say you could do that. Very few. Yep. So, you're not going to find that guys out there. But I'm starting to think that the Steelers want to have that in the secondary, especially the deep secondary, and have guys that are interchangeable and they can move around. And they say, well, we'll move Peterson over here, son. Or we'll move Kazee, let him play the deep because Kazee's really effective as the deep safety. Yeah. But what I'm saying is sometimes you're going to have matchups that you can't do that.
Yep.
And they need that box safety, and right now they don't got him.
That's why one of the players I think is getting a little more attention to the Steelers. I know right after Edmonds signed away, everyone was thinking Brian Branch to the Steelers. That doesn't make any sense for the role you're asking him to play. Mm-hmm. You're not going to draft Brian Branch and ask him to be Terrell Edmonds. That is not what he does. Mm-hmm. That would be dumb. But his teammate, Jordan Battle, who was to Brian Branch in college, basically what Terrell Edmonds was to Minkah Fitzpatrick on the Steelers. That guy makes sense. That's one of the guys that makes sense. There's a couple of guys that are mid-round guys that kind of make sense there. I still question, is that worth, you're still paying those guys close to what you would have paid Edmonds. Yeah. You're still pretty close there. And you could have used that draft pick on something else. I'm not okay with Edmonds being gone. I'm still working that out of my system, as everyone can tell. I think you're in the same place, Shannon. We're both like, what the heck are you doing? But I would like to see a Jordan Battle. The kid from Penn State, Jair Brown. Mm-hmm. He's another one that could work. You've got to get yourself a strong safety, though, who can man cover tight ends and running backs, too.
They've had a couple of pre-draft visits. And only one, they've had quite a few, but only one safety. I think his name's Daniel Scott out of California. So when I seen that, I looked and he's kind of a box type safety. So I think they realized, they said they're going to address it in the draft. So that makes sense that, that's one of their early visits. One of the, we got a comment right here. Well, I talked about it, and I've talked about it in my article that's going to be posted tomorrow. That's what a lot of people were talking about. Trenton Simpson would be a great box safety or safety linebacker hybrid. And when Tomlin was at Clemson's pro day, he was drooling all over the kid. Yeah. And you could tell he was really interested. So I'm concerned about that because I'm afraid Simpson is a really great athlete, but he looks and he reminds me a lot of Devin Bush. So that will let everybody know why it scares me.
Oh, man. I mean, well, you think of guys that don't really have the nastiness to be a linebacker. Terrell Edmonds is on that list. Yeah. He had all the athleticism in the world, but he wasn't
nasty, no.
He wasn't nasty, So I could see that working. I would think it would be funny to go from three tight end. Wow, going all over the place. 3 safety sets to 3 linebacker sets would be an interesting change there for the Steelers. I think our safety rant is good. I think we're good and done here. I did a good job covering everything. Shannon, yep. What do you have? You have anything coming out to plug?
Well, like I said, tomorrow at 8:30, my article about how, it's a 2-part series. The first part was how to upgrade the inside linebackers, free agency edition, and this is the draft edition. And so check that out. I threw out some possibilities that maybe not everybody's talking about. I threw out a sleeper. So, I always love that. Before I started trying to do my own research, I love when guys with sleepers, and that would get me interested and excited for draft. So check that out. And then I have my next article after that is how 3 maneuvers or options the Steelers have to rebuild, or not rebuild, but strengthen the wide receiver room. Because as we talked, there is some holes there and room for improvement.
I'm sorry, Shannon, I have to put this up. George Rice commented, "When I saw Bush with the diaper wrapped around his suit on draft day, I was done." I knew you'd appreciate that one.
Yeah.
All right. As for me, the Vertex is coming out a little later this week. I think it should be either tomorrow or Friday coming out. It is on Landon Roberts. I did a lot on him, and man, I think this is one of those evaluations I'm very confident in. I frequently look at different games. I looked at his game against the Steelers, and then I looked at his game that was the highest graded game by PFF for this season and the worst graded game from PFF this past season. He's the same player in all of them. He's the exact same player in every single one. I tell you with confidence, I think I know exactly what we got in this guy. And it's not bad. It's a good. So check out that article tomorrow. See what we got. My opinions on Landon Roberts. That's our show for today. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for the live chat. We've had great comments today. People listening at home on the podcast side, thank you so much for listening to us. As always, thank you so much. Your support is why we're able to sit here and talk Steelers every Wednesday night. Shannon's in West Virginia. I'm in Pittsburgh. Like otherwise we wouldn't get to talk sports together. So thank you so much for your support that allows us to do this. As always, have a great week, and let's go Steelers.